Okay, so just going over the affirmative action case super quickly, can you give us the details of what exactly was decided on?
Yes, sorry, I was rambling a little bit.
No, you're good.
The actual case is the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard. So Students for Fair Admissions is this group who is really against diversity, equity, inclusion, affirmative action, of course, and basically all these like forced racial groups in higher education. So SCOTUS decided last Thursday that race-based affirmative action in college admissions is in violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. That makes sense to me. If you know the 14th Amendment, if you know how equal protection works, you should, I mean, it actually is crazy how affirmative action has lasted this long, because if you actually just read the clause, it's like, okay, this racial discrimination, race-based affirmative action should not be a thing at the federal level, you know? And so in terms of the reception, there was an ABC News poll or survey, I believe, that found that 52% of Americans agree with the decision and 32% disapprove of it, which I find interesting because I feel like the 32% are very, very loud right now, and they're coming after Clarence Thomas again, of course. But Thomas actually made some key points that you may not even expect him to have made, because, I mean, coming out of a black man's mouth, to them, it's very controversial, and they're accusing him of pulling the ladder up behind him. But like I said before, 1971 and 2023, very different times. But
So what did he say about?
So I skimmed the 237-page court decision, like the whole document. And in it, he uses the argument that the use of race in admissions leads to, quote unquote, inevitable underperformance by Black and Latino students at elite universities, quote, because they are less academically prepared than the white and Asian students with whom they must compete. And so he's basically using the argument that, okay, if you're not choosing students based off of merit, then they will inevitably fail because they're not actually prepared. You're actually doing these people a disservice when admitting them into these schools. And it actually, in the paper, the court documents, they actually brought up facts about how Black and Latino students are a little bit more likely to drop out or fail out of these Ivy Leagues in higher institutions that have affirmative action in place, because there is a portion, not all Black and Latino students, obviously, because there's obviously a lot of smart Black people and Latino people of every race and every color, but the portion that are admitted based off of their race and not their merit, they tend to drop out. And
because they're in competition with a bunch of people that are more academically prepared than they are.
And that's not racist or offensive to say. I mean, that they're not saying that Black people can't get into these schools. They're saying that we should have to get in based off of our merit, our grades, our extracurriculars, and I agree with that. He also said, quote, Thomas also equates affirmative action in higher education with segregation, arguing that racial preferences in college admissions, quote, stamp Black and Latino students with a badge of inferiority. So I think this goes back to the whole Democrat strategy of racism by low expectations. Like, there's no way we could possibly lift ourselves up by our bootstraps. There's no way we could possibly do anything in life without the white savior giving us a hand up. And I reject that notion entirely.
Yeah, and I also think it's just unfair, especially to Asian students, because I know that they tend to be the demographic that's actually impacted the most by affirmative action policies. So essentially, they're less likely to be admitted even with all of the grades and all of the extracurriculars, just because only a certain percentage of their race is allowed in. And they tend to exceed more academically. And I don't really know why that's the case. Maybe it's just like a cultural thing with parents, but
I think it's partially cultural. And also, if you look at, so the original purpose of affirmative action, obviously was to kind of recorrect and right some of the wrongs that America did, mostly to Black people, mostly to American descendants of slavery. Obviously, like Latinos and other minorities are included in that, but that was the original purpose. To this day, the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action are actually white women, because sex is a protected class. And white women are like the most educated, higher educated group in America. Now that the race...
Aren't the majority of people in college women? Like, isn't that what the majority of higher education is?
Yes, which is kind of crazy, but that's basically the reason, is that women are a little bit more likely to be accepted than men in general. But now that the race part is out of it, I think white women are going to even soar further, because it's just like the sex-based affirmative action that I believe that is still legal.